Hi, very good day to you on this segment of the Term 1 PTD address on understanding assessment information. To begin, assessment information must be seen and must be viewed against the desired student outcomes of Haiseng Catholic School. The first is purposeful students, in which Haisians are happy to be in school and Haisians seek to be their best self. The second student outcome also informs us about assessment, in which we hope that Haisians become lifelong learners. And in that way, Haisians have growth mindsets and Haisians can excel. In the domain of assessment, perhaps caring leaders is not so tremendously relevant, but it is caring leaders and Haisians are leaders and Haisians serve actively. So in understanding the progress report for term 1, on the right, you can see a sample progress report for term 1. And for each subject, the marks achieved by the student, the grade, and the percentile range are given as illustrated in the sample results slip. Now, to explain a little bit more in detail, the PCTL or percentile is indicated on the right. Now, what does this range or percentile show? For instance, in this sample results slip, it shows that the score of 68 scored by this student in art attains a B3, and that this score, 68, is higher than the scores for 60 to 80% of the students offering this particular subject. If you go up the list of subjects offered, the percentile ranges from 0 to 20, 80 to 100, 20 to 40, 80 to 100, 60 to 80, 40 to 60, 0 to 20. Okay, this provides parents with some information about how your child has done in some relation to the rest of the students offering this subject. It provides a reference, it provides some guidance, but it does not provide the full picture. Very importantly, in understanding the score achieved by a student in each subject, is that this score is a measure of his or her knowledge in a small range of topics and skills taught in the subject, especially for term 1. Information on the range of topics and skills reflected by the scores in WA1 can be found in the WA1 schedule that was sent to parents via Parents Gateway on 4th February 2022. The illustration on the right is an extract of the schedule for Sec 2 Express. For the relevant schedule, please refer to your own Parent Gateway notification. As you can see, each subject tests a particular list of topics and units, and in some cases, the format of the assessment is also provided. So for instance, in English, it is a spoken critical response. And for geography, it is a geographical investigation project. This information is almost as, if not more important than the marks, because it provides you with information on what the marks represent and what the marks measure. Moving on to school-based assessment and assessment weighting across the whole year. So the overall attainment of students in each subject will be based on their performance in weighted assessments and examinations. The weighting for each assessment is illustrated on the right, and this information can also be found in the 2022 Student Journal and the Haiseng Catholic School website. As you can see, for each level, there is a different weightage and range of WAs and examinations ranging from Set 1 all the way to Set 4 and 5. For certain subjects, mainly the craft and technology subjects, which are coursework based, there are some slightly different weightage distributions listed there. Particularly for lower secondary, B&T and FCE are taken during only one of the semesters. So they take turns to take the level. Moving on to a little bit of comparison between WA coverage and format and exam or semestral assessment format. Each weighted assessment will generally be based on a portion of the learning that has taken place within the term. Let me say that again. Each WA will be based on a portion of the learning taking place generally within the term during which the WA takes place, or between the previous WA and this one. WAs might have different formats, for instance, oral response, written essay response, comprehension, project, etc. In comparison with that, exams will generally be based on all the prior learning that has taken place, with the possible exceptions of topics that are taught just before the exams. Exams will generally be based on national examination style formatting. So taken into context, both types of assessment, each assessment tells you a slightly different information. The marks for a WA and the marks for an examination give you slightly different information. So what does the WA result tell you? And what does an exam or essay result tell you? For WAs, learning mastery of a portion of the learning. So the marks tell you about the learning mastery of a portion of the learning, because WA1, WA2, and WA3 will have very little overlap in topics or content covered. They are very likely to cover different things. Sometimes they are based on different formats. So for instance, a student who is more competent in an oral response versus a written response will generally score better in the WA that is assessed based on oral response. The reverse is also true. So for students who are not as competent in their oral responses, they will score better in their written responses. So the learning mastery in the format assessed also needs to be taken into account. So an oral response, written response, essay response, comprehension. And WA1, 2, and 3 must be viewed together because of all this, because of the difference in topics covered and the possible difference in format assessed. They cannot be viewed in comparison. So you cannot look at WA2 and compare the result of WA1, because they could be on very different topics and based on a very different format. On the other hand, what does an exam or essay result tell you? The exam or essay result tells you about the learning mastery of most, if not all, the learning prior to that point. It will generally be more comprehensive in format and coverage than the WA. It communicates to you the learning mastery of the exam format. And because of the exam format, in some instances, the exam comprises the full range of formats that are assessed at the national exams. It might include an oral component, a comprehension component, and an essay component all in one mark. Having said that, an exam requires the school to stop instruction for 2 weeks in order to implement exams. So there is a sacrifice in terms of learning time. Putting aside time for examinations does lead to a reduction in teaching and learning time. So what to do with all the information? As a parent, for WA, it is important to look at topics and content covered. WA1, 2, and 3 will have very little overlap in topics covered. So for instance, a low score in WA1 followed by a high score in WA2 means the student learned topics in WA2 well and will still need to master topics in WA1. It might not mean that just because WA2 takes place after WA1 that your child has improved. The topics will generally be different, and the format of assessment might also be different and based on different modes depending on the subject. An essay or exam is more comprehensive in identifying good mastery or learning gaps as it covers more material. Finally, I would also like to point out to parents that very importantly, the WA, the SA, or the exam only comprise a small portion of assessments done in school. There are also many assessments that are not weighted, and these cannot be communicated to parents in the form of marks alone because they are meant to be unweighted. These are given to students on a regular basis to help inform teachers of learning progress. So the teachers do keep track of your students, of your child's progress in their subject through these unweighted assessments. In some cases, they may take the form of short quizzes, short checks for understanding in the course of the lesson. Done skillfully, this set of assessment informs the teacher and allows the teacher to ensure that learning gaps are closed along the way, rather than wait for the WA or the SA to come along. We hope that you have found this brief segment on understanding assessment information useful. Thank you.